Japan, and it's very hard to get a hold of anyone who could tell you the gospel, even if you had a heart for it. So we began to think about going to the mission field instead and serving the Lord there. But there were guys, and it was amazing to me how many of my friends, and they meant well, but would come to me and say, when you get over there, you're going to need a side business because sometimes you won't have enough money, and I want to start a business in Japan, and if you'll work with me, you can be my lead guy in Japan and help me get this business started, and you can pastor and everything too. And I'm thinking to myself, it sounds so good, but I knew if I divided my attentions, I probably would not be a very good missionary. And I don't mean to pick on you car salesmen, but you know the old joke is, if you can't preach, we'll become a used car salesman. I didn't want to be a used car salesman in Japan. So I wanted to keep my eyes focused as a faithful minister. I know probably even Brother Matt could tell you of times when people have asked him to do some things where he knows that if he gets too wrapped up into it, it's going to take him away from the calling that God's given him. And he needs to stay faithful to it. And you would want that from your pastor, amen? Now, it doesn't mean that you get a pass and you don't have to be faithful where you are. You're a faithful minister of sorts too in the things that you do and the way you talk up your Lord in your sphere of life amongst your family, give out tracts and things of that nature, invite people to church. So that's something that Tychicus had down very, very well. And I mentioned that he was Paul's right-hand man. Amy and I had a little fun with that lately. We were painting away, and I don't know if you knew this, but Amy's left-handed, so she paints left-handedly. So if you're into painting at all, you know that there's a certain way that's easier for you. So I'm right-handed, so I always start at the left of the wall, and I go to the right. Amy starts at the right of the wall and goes to the left, and we meet somewhere in the middle. And it's always kind of comical, because really, when you're painting, ideally you cut in, and then you paint that section with your roller before it dries, and it helps it all to blend, and you don't end up with what's called a picture framing around the wall. But it's difficult when she heads off over here and wants to do that part, and I'm over here doing, I didn't tell you this part either. Because she's shorter, she gets to do the baseboards. Because I'm taller, I get to do the chair rails. So I paint up to the chair rails, cutting in, and then we come down the sides. But she's going like this, and I'm going like this. And then I roll the whole thing because it just doesn't seem to be any other way around it. But all that to say that I don't have a right-hand man. I have a left-hand woman. But I'm very thankful for her. How many of you are left-handed, by the way? 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's a bunch of you. Annabelle, you're left-handed. Well, then why are you raising your right hand? Oh, she had an answer ready for me. She says, I'm writing. She's got her pen in her hand. Good one. All right. Well, Paul had a right-hand man. He had quite a few of them, actually. And then we saw that he was a fellow servant. And who remembers what that underlying word is for servant there? Is it just casual service when you feel like it? It's a doulos. You're like a slave to your master doing whatever he asks you to do. Now, that may sound rough at first, but was Paul a difficult taskmaster? No. In some ways, it would be easy to serve someone like Paul and to serve with him. But even if he asked you to do something hard, which he would eventually, a real fellow servant wouldn't mind doing it, okay? So I believe that his title reveals a whole bunch about him. And then we looked at his task, the things that he was given to do. And we were in Ephesians chapter 6, 21 and 22. So open in your Bibles to Ephesians chapter 6, verses 21 and 22. I mentioned last time about how Paul cared for the churches, and he sent Tychicus and others on these errands to check out the other churches, make sure they're doing okay. There's nothing worse than starting a church and then having it go to pot, so to speak, after a while. And then what do you have to show for it? So he wanted to make sure that things were continuing on, and he couldn't be in every place at one time. So he sent out these couriers, and they were sharing information, and he was learning about the other churches. And I mentioned how even I have a tremendous burden and an interest in the churches in Alabama. I'd really like to know, how are they doing? And that's one of the reasons why I go to the pastor fellowships, because I'd like to hear firsthand testimony about what they're seeing, what new churches might be starting, and what their needs are and how we can pray for them and maybe even help out once in a while. But then we get to verse 22, Ephesians 6:22, and we find out that Paul sent him to comfort the saints. So let's read 21 first. But that ye also may know my affairs and how I do, Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, shall make known to you all things, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that ye might know our affairs and that he might comfort your hearts. Now, why do you think they would need comfort? Paul's the one doing all this extravagant stuff. How would that be a comfort to them for Tychicus to show up and tell them what's going on?
Because they were under persecution too.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this, maybe I did already, that if you know that your leader can handle it, if he can do it, then maybe we can do it too, right? Sometimes when I haven't had a lot of time with Matt this time around, but if I had more time with him, I'd ask, one of the first questions I'll ask him is, brother, what are you seeing out there as you travel for trends? How is Christianity doing? And let him just tell me, oh, I'm seeing this, and this is really good, but this isn't so good. It helps me know how to pray. It helps me to know what might be trying to make its way into this church someday, through the grapevine, if you will. There's so much media out there now, feeding people with messages and preachers and personalities that we as pastors never really know all the things that our congregation is listening to. So it's helpful to talk with people. I'll do the same thing with Michael Grove when he comes. We'll sit down and I'll say, hey, what are you seeing out there? And it'll be a help to me. Well, in this case, they knew because firsthand information came by way of Tychicus. And so you can picture him sitting down and, where'd Ben go? I gotta have a little fun with Ben McCary. And having a cup of coffee and discussing how things were going. What are you seeing back there where Paul is? Tell us, how's he holding up? Are the churches doing okay? And is he still praying for us? Is he going to come visit us? They always want to know if he's going to come visit them. You know that because he would say, I'm going to show up if the Lord allows me to. He's trying to get there to visit with them. And so this was a comfort for the Ephesian believers because they needed some comfort. They needed some word from their esteemed friend Paul, who had doubtless brought them comfort before. You know how that is. If you can't get the main guy, but you can get somebody else that represents him well, it's still a form of blessing. It's still a form of encouragement. And that's who he was. I hope that, by way of application, I hope that you encourage one another with your service too. You ever look around you and say, so-and-so is doing this, and they've got some challenges too. If they can do it, I can do it. You ever think like that? Your measurement isn't always against the pastor. Sometimes it's just against other people in your church. Spouses have other spouses here that they can fellowship with, learn things, be encouraged by. And I hope that you'll take time to reach out. One of the things that we talked about with the young couples meeting we had a few Friday nights ago was what kinds of things could we do like that? And they did mention it would be nice if we had more opportunity to get together with other couples and just pick each other's brains. Now, I don't know the easiest way to make that happen. I don't want to be always the one who sets up another program or sets up another reason to do it. But there are a lot of you here who have expertise in one or two areas, if not more, that could be shared with somebody else. You just have to find where those people are. Sometimes that means those of you with the interests have to let them know that you'd like to learn a little bit more about these things. As a pastor, if I can be frank, one of the two areas that most people struggle in, you may already know this, are marriage relationships and financial relationships or financial challenges. And those are the two areas, though, that people hate to ask for help in. They'll wait so long until too many bad decisions have got them to a place where it's very hard to dig out of that hole. Don't wait that long. Larry and Rick, they work with money all the time in the church office. Have you ever reached out to them and say, hey, I'm not really in a bad place yet, but I want to make sure I never get there. Can we sit down? I'll buy you, I'll come over or I'll buy you a meal. We'll sit down. I just want to run some things by you, see what you think. What stops us from doing that kind of thing? You know what it is? It's pride. That's right. There are other areas, and I'm just picking one, but there are a lot of you with some expertise that would be a real blessing to somebody typically younger who's just now kind of testing those waters, and they need to share some of those things with somebody else. But you have also, those of you who are the ones doing the sharing, you've got to be really graceful and not critical. That helps them get over the pride thing. Be a loving friend who wants to share life with them and help one another. So I think a lot of this went on more naturally. The word today that people like to use is organically. They were living around each other. They couldn't help but see each other's warts on their backs. So they would discuss things and solve them quickly. I think the fellowship was much more close and probably much more sweet than a lot of what we know today. We just, we leave church, we run home, and then we get into our own routines, and we don't see each other for the rest of the week. We're the only ones that can make any adjustments there. They won't happen by themselves. So I just mentioned that to you because there's great comfort in what you learn from other people. And if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. All right? So another thing that Tychicus might have been good at in comforting them was to remind them that, hey, you're ready to give up. Don't give up. Just keep fighting for the faith because the Lord will deliver in ways that you won't imagine. Couldn't imagine. Just stay faithful and watch the Lord work. And he was like their cheerleaders. Fight on, fight on. That's what Paul wants me to mention to you guys. And you can imagine why that would be an encouragement to them. So he has the task of handling affairs for Paul. Well, it begs the question, what were these affairs that he handled? I think we can spot 2 or 3 of them for sure. 1 or 2 I might have to read between the lines, if you will. But we know that he handled epistles. He was involved with carrying Ephesians, Colossians, and possibly even Philemon too. Can you imagine being tasked with a little leather bag made out of goat skin strapped around your shoulder and a hand on it just to make sure it doesn't disappear, and running from town to town or riding on some critter just to hand carry a gospel that was put out by the Apostle Paul? That's what these guys were doing. How would you like to know that Paul trusted you with the Gospels or with the epistles? And so that's the kind of guy that Tychicus was. He was faithful in those affairs. He probably handled even a church for a time. I'll give you an example. In Titus chapter 1, verse 5, we read, "For this cause left I thee in Crete, that thou shouldest set in order the things that are wanting or lacking, and ordain elders in every city, as I had appointed thee." So we know that he used him in that regard too. He doesn't say that he stayed there, but it's very possible that he did, for a time anyways, until somebody else could take the position that he'd move on. In Titus chapter 3 and verse 12, if you want to turn there with me, it looks like it's very possible that he replaced Titus, whom we talked about last time, or was that Sunday school? I forget when we were talking about Titus. I think it was Sunday school. In Titus chapter 3, in verse 12, let's look at that together. Titus chapter 3 and verse 12, we read, "When I shall send Artemas unto thee, or Tychicus, be diligent to come unto me to Nicopolis, for I have determined there to winter." So he's sending those guys out to replace him for a time. We don't know which one ends up staying, whether it's Artemas or Tychicus. But as soon as they arrive, you're to come back to me. And Paul probably was turning that person into another errand runner, if you will. And so these things are all part of what he's being called to do. I think there's one other affair that we can we can see here, and that is he was good with the money. You remember when Paul was traveling, a lot of times he'd say, "I'm on my way back to Jerusalem to help the saints there." What was he collecting as he traveled? Money. Because the Jewish believers were so persecuted that they didn't have very much. And he's way out there traveling these other areas all the way up in Asia Minor, and he's collecting from people who still maybe had relatives back there. They went out from some dispersion, maybe 1 or 2 generations ago, and they still love their roots. Do we see that still today? Yeah, almost 2,000 years later, we still have families who know exactly where they came from in Israel and are connected in some way. And if they can help with something going on over there, they're going to try to help. Well, this was just the very beginnings of that when this was taking place. And so if you go with me to 2 Corinthians 8, I want to show you why I say that. 2 Corinthians 8. He was entrusting all kinds of affairs to these guys. 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 18. 18 is the first one. And we have sent with him the brother whose praise is in the gospel throughout all the churches. Jump down to verse 22. And we have sent with them our brother whom we have oftentimes proved diligent in many things, but now much more diligent upon the great confidence which I have in you. Who is this guy he's talking about? It's Tychicus. These are the guys that are serving with Paul. And I love how he calls them fellow servants. He doesn't, and sometimes it's fellow soldiers. He never looks down on them. He uses the word fellow, meaning alongside, the fellowship with me along the way. And so we see some things here where if you go down to verse 24, wherefore show ye to them and before the churches the proof of your love and of our boasting on your behalf. What was the best way they could show their love? Give something to them, to help them. That's right. So if he entrusted epistles and a church, certainly money was no issue, right? You could very easily see Paul say, hey, you're able to handle my affairs when it comes to the gospel or the epistles transporting. You're able to handle the gospel, what was the other one? You're able to take a church for a time. Certainly I can let you take money. So it begs the question for us, are we faithful with the Word of God, with our church, and with the money God allows to pass through our hands? Are we? We should be. I hope that we are. What about in our homes? Do we faithfully bring the Word into it? Do we faithfully pass the Word out of it? Are we carrying it from place to place? We take tracts. That's a start. That's part of it. And then one final passage I want to take you to for a little bit of fun. It's a little bit of fun. Go to Acts chapter 20. I'm just trying to highlight some of the experiences that these guys had the privilege to be involved with when traveling with the said Paul. Acts chapter 20. In Acts chapter 20, we read in the beginning, and I'll give you the context as we go, or you'll get the context. And after the uproar was ceased, Paul called unto him the disciples and embraced them and departed for to go into Macedonia. So he's on the move again. And when he had gone over those parts and had given them much exhortation, he came into Greece. And there abode 3 months. And when the Jews laid wait for him, they're after him again, as he was about to sail into Syria, he purposed to return through Macedonia. So he's on the run, that's the context. And there accompanied him into Asia Sopater of Berea, and of the Thessalonians Aristarchus and Secundus and Gaius of Derbe, and Timotheus and of Asia, and Tychicus and Trophimus. Okay, so we know that Tychicus is in this entourage. Verse 5, these going before tarried for us at Troas. So they were there, and he's waiting for them all to gather up together, because, as Pat said, there's strength in numbers. Then he says in verse 6, and we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came unto them to Troas in 5 days, where we abode 7 days. There's a lot of detail, really, here. Verse 7, and upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. So there were some ready listeners. Okay, how many of you are ready to stay till midnight? Now, I know I'm not Paul, and I would probably keep your attention as well. Think of the stories this guy had to tell about people getting saved. Imagine hearing the testimony that Matt gave tonight 3 or 4 times over, with all the details about each person that he's seen come to Christ. And then add to it 5 or 6 stories about, being flogged and chased, and how this family kept you and fed you, and then you had to sneak out the back door. You can imagine why he could hold their attention till 12. But anyways, we continue on in verse 8. And there were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. So this is the thing that cracked me up today. Did they use incandescent or LEDs? Candle lights. Some kind of flame burning, right? Y'all know that I can't do candles. There's just something in the smoke or the perfume of them. It gives me a headache, and then if I'm around it too long, it gets in my stomach. And Amy's not been able to wear perfume all these years. I don't know how she does it. She still smells wonderful, but she doesn't use any perfume. And she's very gracious to me that way. I have a very sensitive nose to some chemical that's in those things. I don't know what it is, but can it be possible? I said, and there were many candles burning. So all this smoke is wafting up till the middle of the night. And there's this guy up there getting a little woozy. And it reads in verse 9, and there sat in a window a certain young man named Eutychus, being fallen into a deep sleep. And as Paul was long preaching, he sunk down with sleep and fell down from the third loft and was taken up dead. Talk about good stories to tell people, right? Well, he goes on, and Paul went down and fell on him, and embracing him said, "Trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him." Reminds me of a time in Japan. We had one of our directors from Baptist World Mission came over, and we held a nice conference for a few days, and he was a special speaker, and his wife came with him too. But she had some health problems that we didn't know a lot about. And in the middle of this conference, she was walking down the aisle, making her way to the seat, and she just fell right down and was, just lying there. We're all like, what happened to the brother's wife? And hand goes up, and she's okay, in third person. It was really funny. She's okay. And she starts getting up, and people came to her and started helping her up. And I don't remember what caused her to fall down, but it was related to some health issue that she was dealing with. And we began to pray for him. But Paul's like, he's okay, he's going to be all right. Don't you worry. And it says in verse 11, and when he therefore was come up again and had broken bread and eaten, he talked a long while, even till break of day. So now how long have they been fellowshipping with this guy? All night. And they brought the young man alive and were not a little comforted. So I think it's key that last word I read was comforted and not a little bit. How would we say that today? Very much comforted. They were a lot comforted. Imagine why. Think of all the things that Paul says through the course of the night to encourage them in their faith. Think of all the connections with the various people and things that they'd done and the doctrine that they had learned. And then on top of it, he throws in a miracle. Guy falls down dead, and he brings him back to life. And he says, oh no, he's not dead. He'll be fine. And then they eat and fellowship together, and then off they go to the next city. In Tychicus, two things here. He gets to be involved with all of this activity, along with the other ones. Talk about leaving an indelible imprint upon your heart and mind. And then secondly, he has all these stories now. They kind of become his. And now he can tell them when he gets sent out. And you can see Paul, you can imagine Paul saying, now Tychicus, I'm going to send you over now to Pergamos, let's say. And when you get there, remind them of all the things that we discussed tonight and the things you saw and heard. And off he goes. And when he gets there, those people are going to trust that he's been in the presence of Paul, who's been in the presence of the Lord. So that's meant to be very, very, very encouraging. And it begs the question, how do we get to a place where we have such influences going on in our lives and we have things to talk about like that? What will it take? We have to wait till Matt comes back every 5-6 months or read his prayer letter. And I'm sure Matt could tell us some stories, some good, maybe some not so good. There are pastors around the country that are struggling with some various things. And he could tell you about those too. But Paul was always so refreshingly encouraging. I've been trying to pull that out in Sunday school too. Paul could have been of a terribly critical spirit, but he wasn't. He was constantly sending these young men out and telling them how to help encourage the churches that were being built. You ever thought about what it'd be like to do that? When I was in Japan with John Himes, when we were serving the Lord together, and it dawned on us one day, we're in a city of about 350,000 people. There were probably 5 churches that all preached the gospel. 2 of them were in our mission board, Baptist World Mission. We had 2, one on each side of the city. And we had a burden for the rest of the city. But then it hit us one day, what about all these towns out from here? Who's reaching those? And the closest we got to doing something about it, like you'd see here, was we made plans. but it never happened. We had plans of just packing up and being gone for 2 days, telling our wives where we're going to be, giving them the cities, the names of the towns, and we were just going to head out into the countryside. And so picture us going out to Hartford. There's no churches there. It's just a bunch of Buddhism and Shintoism and a little Confucianism. And we're just going to start giving out gospel tracts and see if we can get anybody to talk with us. And if we can't, then we get back into the car and we drive to the next town. We get all the way over to Geneva and we start again. The towns in Japan and most countries are just like the ones here. Everybody's going about their business, trying to live life, make things work, have something to eat every day, raise families, have a few luxuries without Jesus Christ. And then I read these and I think, oh, what could we have accomplished? We were just going to go and stay all day and fast all day, not eat, maybe drink, and just pray that God would use us like the New Testament missionaries are used. Now, do you have to wait till you go to a foreign field to do stuff like that? Who among us has ever done a search in Alabama alone to see if there is yet a town with no gospel ministry at all? No church preaching the gospel. Is it possible in Alabama there is one like that? Now, it'd be easiest for us to say, no, that's hard to believe, Pastor. Not in Alabama. I bet you'd be surprised. You would find cities or towns of 2,000, 3,000 people where there's nothing but a Jehovah's Witness cult. You go to a few more towns and there's nothing there but maybe a Methodist church and a Catholic church. Is there a good gospel witness in a Catholic church and a Methodist church? Probably not. So I'm trying to apply this a little bit and help us realize that there's still a lot of work to be done. And God willing, I'll be able to maybe spearhead some of those things one day. Because those are the things that you do that give you stories to tell like this one day. Pastor Russell has one. Imagine him telling the grandkids about that rabid cat that latched onto his leg when he was out giving out the gospel. It's a good story. He what? Jedediah got bit once out giving the gospel. Oh, he was, oh, I see. I didn't know that part of the story. We've got to be involved with the ministry, folks, if we're going to really collect the best stories. And so as we study Tychicus, I hope you keep some of those things in mind and be some of what he was for the Apostle Paul. Hebert, in his commentary, says of Tychicus, he was always traveling with or for Paul. He was the apostle's trusted and faithful courier. Are we trusted, faithful couriers of God's word and his plan today? Well, I've said enough about that. We don't need more education. We don't need more money. We just need some drive. We just need the interest. And may God use us that way. Dr. Custer used to say, one of the most graceful professors that I knew at Bob Jones University, he used to say, have thy tools ready. Do you know the rest of it? God will find thee work. You concentrate on having your tools ready, he'll find you some work. May the Lord help us with some of these things. Amen. Let's sing one more time. Same song we sang last week because it so fits. 380 Faithful Men. 300